Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to remove the standard steering wheel off a Honda Civic EF. Should be the same in the CRX and a few other models that are similar. I'm going to be installing this aftermarket steering wheel. I'll show you that whole process of how to do that. Let's get right into it. So in order to take the steering wheel off, you're only going to need a couple of tools. You're going to need a very thin flathead screwdriver. You're going to need a 19mm socket. And you're going to need obviously the ratchet and potentially an extension depending on how deep your socket is, and you'll see why in a minute. So basically you want to take the flathead screwdriver, you want to stick it in here, try not to damage it, and just pop the cymbal out. Now my cymbal's already kind of screwed, so it doesn't really matter, but if you want to keep it, you just be careful with that. And then all you have to do is put the 19mm socket in and then undo the nut. Now my one I can get away without using an extension, but depending on how deep your socket is, you may need an extension, so that's why I mentioned it. So what you want to do is just undo that nut. You're probably going to have to get to the point where it locks, and then you can break it loose like that, and then undo it. Okay, get the nut out of there. And then what you want to do is put the key in and make sure that the steering wheel's straight. It's going to make your life a lot easier putting it back on. So whether you're putting a new one on or the same one on, whatever, if you make sure that it's straight, when you pull it off, you put it back, it's going to be straight again. You won't have to worry too much about it. So just make sure you pull it and keep it straight. One other thing to note, this one's going to come off real easy, as you can see. But what you might want to do, if it doesn't come off easy, what you might need to do is just knock it on this side, that side, and that side, and just keep knocking it and apply leverage evenly around the steering wheel. Like yank it that way, and that way, and that way, and eventually if you keep knocking it and like that, it'll come off. So that's all you need to do. So that's it. That's how you take the steering wheel off. Now one other thing to note, if you're putting an aftermarket steering wheel on, what you may need to do is pull this piece out here. So with my one, the boss kit wouldn't fit with this on there. It was pushing it out and it wouldn't catch on the spline, so you may have to pull this piece out as well. So that's it. That's the whole process. That's how you take the steering wheel off. If you're putting it back, it's the same process, just in reverse. So now I'm going to be putting my boss kit on. So I got this boss kit here, and I want to make sure that the steering wheel is going to be straight. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bolt the steering wheel with a couple of the bolts to it, just to make sure. Now first things first, I'm just going to see that this is actually the right one for the car. Okay, so if you're putting it on, mine had this piece here which looks like it's a bit of a spacer for the old steering wheel. Now I'm going to pull that off because on my one, my new boss kit won't fit with this on there. So I'm going to pull it off and see if it's going to work without it. So I'm just going to pull it off because otherwise it doesn't grab to very many of the teeth. Whereas without it, it is grabbing on much better. So, alright, so now we've got that fitting. Make sure that the horn piece is actually touching as well, which it is. So we should be good to go on that. So now what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to put 2 of the screws in so we can make sure that the steering wheel is straight. Now I'm going to put this horn plate in as well. Actually, I'll put the horn on too to just hold it in place. Now this horn plate is not ideal. Might not actually. It doesn't seem to fit with this horn button, so yeah, that's not going to work. Alright, I'm going to go without the horn plate for now, because the horn button does just work on the steering wheel. Okay, so I'm going to bolt the steering wheel on with just 2 bolts, just for the purpose of securing it, making sure it's straight. You can see already that it's not. Yeah, for the correct holes it's off. Okay, let's grab the screws. Now obviously you want to try and keep everything as straight as possible. I've been moving it around a bit, so after I mount it I'm going to take it for a test drive and just make sure it is actually straight. But this is enough to tell us approximately. So around here is where the old one was. So if we go there, it's too much. Basically there's not a lot of adjustment, so it's going to have to be this one. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm just going to put the rest of these screws in and then we can take it for a test drive. Okay, so that's in there. Now what I'm going to do is put the nut in, and I'm just going to tighten it up just enough to hold it in so I can take it for a test drive. Now I don't think there's much play I can do because the spline is quite coarse. However, I'm still going to test it anyway in case I'm way off, but it shouldn't be. Now I can take the key out and lock it. Now the other thing you want to do is test the horn, but we'll do that in a second. Take it for a test drive. Okay, so now we want to test the horn and make sure that it actually works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook up the positive battery and then I'll test this. Okay, so my horn's not quite working. I've just hooked up the battery and tested it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the steering wheel back off and I'm going to see what's going on. I don't think that little tab is touching. Contacting, so I'm just going to bend it out a bit. Let's do that. Okay. Now what we want to do is test this. Okay. Don't know why. The horn always seems to be a problem when doing a steering wheel. So basically what was happening with mine is, if you see this pin for the horn and the steering wheel, what I noticed was it was actually resting on the plastic. So I've just bent it out like that a little bit, right? And now it's more aligned with actually touching the metal. So just want to make sure that it still is like that. And now when we put the steering wheel on, and I've hooked up the horn button, so now when we touch the horn button, it works. So that's what I had to do. So just make sure of that kind of thing when you're putting yours together, because I've found that the horn's always a pain. They always tend to cause a problem. But anyway, so that's it. That's sorted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bolt it up. And then I'm going to go take it for a test drive. Make sure that the steering wheel's straight. Just a bit. It doesn't have to be too tight. Just enough to hold it so that we can actually go for a drive safely. Okay, put this on. Again. Okay, definitely works. Alright, cool. So now we can go take it for a test drive and see if everything's good. So that's it. That's how you remove and install a new steering wheel in a Honda Civic EF. Same thing with the CRX and I think the few other similar models like the EE and so on. Anyway, that's the steering wheel now. It's all done. So, hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope that was helpful so you can see how you can do it. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.